Greetings. This is a brief reflection of gratitude. On June 24th, 1949, a Friday, at 6 a.m., I made my debut, my entrance into the physical world, the Jubilee Hospital in Kingston, Jamaica. My mother, Dorothy Murray, my father, Oswald Smith, they were both teenagers, 16 and 17. So I was raised in a one room with five persons. Main person is my grandmother, who de facto became my mother and to a certain extent father. I had a stepfather, eventually, great guy. And I met my biological father when I was 17 years of age. And we had a pretty up and down but fruitful relationship. Most of the people I'm talking about now have transitioned, including both my mother and father and my dear grandmother. But one other person who was in that unit, which is my aunt, Esme Grant, she's still alive. So she's 12 years older than I. So in another year, she'll be celebrating her 90th. Still going strong. But first, I want to give acknowledgement and gratitude to my ancestors. My roots is Africa, in fact, Nigeria. But as I will explain shortly, there's an infusion of Irish from my father's side, who they came from St. Elizabeth. And my grandfather, Ambrose Smith, and his mother, and my father's mother in particular, was an infusion of African and Irish. Let's put it that way. On my maternal side, the roots are in St. Hans, parish of Jamaica. Just for bragging rights, that's the parish of the Honorable Marcus Garvey and Honorable Bob Marley, both from that similar passage. So my mother was born in St. Anne. My grandmother was born in St. Anne, and her father was born in St. Anne, and my mother's father was born in St. Anne, and his father was born in St. Anne. And I had the privilege of knowing all of them, with the exception of John Murray, who was my grandfather's father, who my only recollection is going to his funeral. It wasn't a very good experience. I think I might have been around 4 or 5, and I didn't like funerals. So I'm grateful to those. I'm grateful to even those who survived the slavery period, because my great grandfather was a child during slavery. And so this is something that we were connected to. I didn't speak to him as we were saying. But I grew up in Kingston, Jamaica, with my grandmother. And to her and my aunt, I owe a deep sense of gratitude to them. Because the values that I have carried with me throughout life was embedded and inculcated. I was programmed. And one of the things I can recall about my grandmother is she instilled in me the importance of gratitude. And I've been extremely fortunate, very fortunate, to be able to express this gratitude to my kindergarten teacher, Miss Christie from High Old Bond Street, who laid the foundation for me. And I didn't realize this until I was in my 40s when I actually visited her. And I asked her what was her favorite subject. And she said her favorite subject was geography. And secondly, it was mathematics or arithmetic as we call it then. And then something strange happened in my mind at that time, because I had a deep passion to travel when I was young. And I was very good at mathematics, arithmetic for a start. And then I realized the connection that her love of geography meant that she used to teach us about the capitals of the world. And I always wanted to visit the capital of the world in Europe, not so much the Americas, but mainly Europe, of course, and Africa. And again, I was very grateful that I was able to visit, I think, all the capitals in Europe, some Asia, and the continent of Africa, where I spent some time there. She laid the foundation for my ability to compute numbers. However, when I went to Kingston College, because I got a scholarship in 1960, went to Kingston College, and I was exposed for the first time to algebra and geometry. And I wasn't doing very well. in both those sub areas of mathematics. And my teacher, who I had for 2 years in, it was high school, but this was seventh and eighth grade Jamaica British structure, which is relatively equivalent to seventh and eighth grade combined. Same kind of thing. And I wasn't doing very well. I was still getting very good marks in arithmetic, but geometry and algebra. And he called me one day and he said, "You are joking around because you are quite capable of doing the work. You need to get your act together and do the homework, do the work." That simple conversation, one on one conversation, Mr. McDonald, had a profound effect on me. And I went and I sat down that evening and I pledged to myself that I was not going to go to school the next day until I master those algebra, I think. And I sat there that night and I found the key, which I've shared with many of my students because I eventually became a mathematics teacher. I found the key, but it began with me deciding that I was going to master this thing. Why? Because his teacher said I was capable. He had faith in me. And this is something that throughout my life I've benefited, and I try to do the same with student, young people, and everyone I come across with. What you see in them, they may not see in themselves. I went on, of course, to be a fairly competent mathematics student. And then during that time, the great influence from my principal, Douglas Forrest. So when I graduated from school in 1968, I returned in 1969 just to visit to say hello and to thank him for what he had done. Again, the spirit of gratitude. And in the discussion with him, he informed me that he needed a maths teacher. I said, I don't know of anyone. He says, no, I was talking about you. And of course, there began my career as a teacher of mathematics, 1969. Again, he had faith in me and my ability. And in conversation with him, he pointed out to me that throughout my time at Kingston College, I was always helping other students. If a teacher didn't turn up for class, I would go to the class and I would teach the class maths. I didn't know this. I was just doing what I like to do, help people. But he saw in me what I did not see in myself. So I have to be very grateful to him. I'm very grateful to my stepfather, Mr. Rommel, because he was there for me as a child. Simple little acts, buying you ice cream, giving you a little money. When he was on his last period in his life on this earth, I was able to offer him kindness. I had him a nurse to help him, who was there right up until the very day that he transitioned. But what he said to me in a kind of appreciation, he was saying, "Oh, I was a very good son to him." And I said, "But you are my father. You are the father that I knew. You are the one who showed me, kindness as a child and, you know, did for me a lot of things." Because he said that when he was, was very ill, and I would come and I would actually hold him and we would walk together because I knew he loved to go outside and, look at what is happening. So I would put aside time, go visit him, and I would do that. And he said that when we hold together, he felt the energy was stronger. And we felt, good. And I appreciated that because, again, I was able to offer gratitude to him. The same thing happened when my mother was very ill and transitioning. I wasn't there directly, but through a very close friend and became my wife and ex-wife, she was able to offer and to take care of my mother in her last days before she transitioned. And I'm very, very grateful for that act of kindness and love. So I mentioned those. I also mentioned my aunt. I could not understand why I was very close to her at an energetic level. I couldn't understand. And then I understood when she began to explain to me my childhood. 'Cause she was there. I was there, but I didn't have the level of consciousness. That she was the one who usually put me to sleep. After I was fed, she would have me on her chest. And if anyone understands how the rhythm of life by your heartbeat, and therefore our heartbeat was in synchronicity, because that is what was her responsibility. She was 12 years of age. That was her responsibility. My grandmother, they would make whatever it is, and then she would have to feed me. And, for those who understand, you had to put the child here so that they could belch. you know, um, so that explained to me as I grew older. She also explained to me two things that I didn't realize. In fact, it's very recently. One was I had a kind of a, I like to smell cigar smoke, but I never smoked. But I like to smell, but I could not understand why. And then she explained that her father, who died unfortunately 3 months after I was born, he used to smoke cigar when I was a baby, when I was just born. And she gave me a little story, which I don't know what is the meaning, that there was a dog. Because when you were small in those days, you'd put in some hand, with pillars, and they put you outside on the ground. Because remember, we lived in one room, bedroom, everything except kitchen. The kitchen was outside, and the bathroom was an outside bathroom. And so this dog would come every day. They didn't know where the dog came from. They didn't know who owned the dog. I just say a brown dog. And he would come and he would lie down next to me. And she said he did that throughout my baby days, so to speak. And nobody knew where the dog came from. He would just leave in the evenings, and in the morning he would come and he would just lay there. So I've grown to understand about the non-physical world and the physical world, but this is not what we're getting into here today. Just want to express gratitude. My elementary school teacher, Miss Barton, that tremendous influence, helped me to study so I could get a scholarship to go to high school and to improve my education. And of course, to the friends in the journey of life, I'm grateful to all of them. Those who came and left early, and those who we have maintained friendship for many decades, and some who we have maintained friendship for decades, but they have gone on to do other things. And of course, there are a few who have transitioned. So I was looking at a book and it says the heaven of gratitude right before coming on here. And I smiled. So gratitude is key element of life. Be grateful for life. And I can assure you that the abundance that life have to offer will continuously manifest itself. So to the young people, to my children, grandchildren, and even to those who have not arrived, gratitude. Not only feel it, but express it. Every opportunity you get, let people know. And as I say, I've been extremely fortunate. And all the people I've mentioned there, I was able to let them know that I was grateful for what they did and the help that they gave to me. And then I had a mentor, Paul Miller, tremendous impact. And he transitioned recently, but I was able, when I visited Jamaica, to let him know how much he has impacted my life and how much the foundation laid by my grandmother, especially around honesty, that he was someone who not just talk about it, but he lived it. He became a politician. Well, let me correct that. I don't think he was a politician. He went into politics, he was a senator, but he was absolutely impeccable during a time when people were mainly interested in how they could use the government apparatus to enrich themselves. Honesty, above everything else, and love for others. We would spend a lot of time trying to figure out how we can help young people. And I'm very grateful to Paul. Very, very grateful to Paul. There are many other persons who I could mention. My dear friend Neville Glanville of football fame. My second cousin, Paul Burke, of political connections, so to speak, are just a few of the persons who come to mind at this time. But gratitude, I can't emphasize it too much. Being grateful. And you're not just, there's a saying which Bob Proctor usually said, you must be grateful, but you must also have the willingness to receive. So, see you next year. The journey continues.